3 weeks before everything blew up, I got pulled into this random strategy realignment meeting with a kid named Evan Pritchard, 26, fresh out of nowhere, and apparently our new ops and systems optimization advisor, whatever the hell that meant. He walked in like he'd just come from brunch in Soho. Patagonia vest, Yeezys, still had the packaging creases in his shirt sleeves. I'm serious. The guy looked like he'd peeled the tag off in the Uber. The cologne hit before the door even closed. Some overly aggressive citrus crap. Like he'd bathed in it. He didn't shake hands, didn't ask what we did, just smiled, leaned back in the chair like he owned the place, and opened with, "Hey team, let's talk synergies." I'd been with Steelmark Systems for 11 years, since before we had an office printer. I'd built the back end from scratch. Literal frameworks written on diner napkins back when our server was a salvage Dell tower humming in the corner of a storage closet. Through CTO swaps, late-stage funding scrambles, and one time the whole server room flooded because someone stacked Red Bulls on top of the AC vent. I held it all together. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. So, when Evan started talking about sunsetting redundant stand-ups, and containerizing cross-functional deliverables, I knew exactly what we were in for. Nepo baby, with a title, a mission, and zero clue what he was touching. First thing he did was wipe out our weekly QA check-ins, said they were non-scalable rituals. Then he nuked the sprint retrospective, replaced it with something called feedback sprints that were mostly just everyone pretending to listen while he recapped podcast episodes he half remembered. Realignment, he called it, more like slow-motion sabotage. The guy once asked me if we could switch our cloud infra from AWS to Google Drive to save costs. I'm not joking. This man thought Dropbox was an enterprise-grade back-end solution. I didn't correct him. I just smiled, nodded, and made notes. Quiet ones. I didn't argue, didn't bark back. That's what he wanted, someone to push against. Instead, I documented everything. Logged changes, synced backups to a secure node, triple encrypted my old commits, made damn sure nothing critical was sitting in the open. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being smart. You don't argue with a toddler holding a gas can. You build a perimeter, and you make sure, when it all burns, your exit path is already clear. 2 Mondays later, Evan dropped a calendar bomb. All hands Zoom, no agenda. That's corporate code for something ugly. Everyone knows it. He logged on late, of course, hair styled like he'd used half a tub of product, sipping cold brew like we were all gathered for a team picnic. Exciting updates ahead, he said, grinning like he'd solved world hunger. We're kicking off a temporary optimization restructure. Translation, my dev team. The team I built, mentored, and carried through a decade of chaos, now reported directly to him. The call stayed silent. Nobody asked questions. Evan didn't leave room for any. He launched straight into the changes like he was reading from a startup blog. First, he scrapped roadmap planning. Too waterfall, he said. Next, he killed the compliance review cycle. Doesn't serve agility. Then he took a sledgehammer to our deployment tracking board. Gone. Replaced it with a color-coded Trello setup that didn't even have rollback columns. And just when I thought he'd run out of bad ideas, he announced the big one. Steelmark was bringing in a Denver-based consultancy to modernize the stack, supposedly full of top-tier engineers. These guys showed up in hoodies with Venn diagrams on them and talked like they'd learned everything from Medium articles. First meeting, one of them asked if our finance clients could just pivot to Airtable for scalability. Another said we should replace our CI pipeline with one-click deployment tools because Python's trending higher than JavaScript. I swear to God, these people couldn't debug a toaster. I pinged Evan privately after the meeting. Just a simple question. Why aren't we onboarding these folks in a sandbox environment first? His response came fast. Don't get stuck in legacy thinking. Be a team player. I stared at the message for a solid minute. Legacy thinking. That was his name for experience now. I didn't reply, just closed Slack, leaned back, and looked around the office. The carpet still had a stain from the time we spilled coffee during our first ever client demo. Nobody else in the room now would even know that happened. Hell, half of them wouldn't even know what language the original platform was written in. So, I stayed late. Not angry, not sad, just dialed in. I pulled out the old binders. Yeah, actual paper. Back when we didn't have legal budget, we printed everything and filed it in a 2-drawer cabinet we used as a desk leg. Took me an hour, but I found what I needed. The original IP license agreement, version 1. No edits, no footnotes. I signed it back when Steelmark was 3 guys, a borrowed WeWork office, and a coffee pot on the floor. Section 8.3b. All proprietary infrastructure, the source code, the architecture, the deployment workflows, the CI/CD templates. Every last piece of it was contractually tied to a single individual, me, and any core layer modifications required my explicit authorization. I kept reading it over, thinking maybe I missed something, some clause buried in there that let them assign rights elsewhere. There wasn't one. I remembered why we did it that way. Back then, nobody thought we'd scale. The idea was if the company failed, the IP wouldn't get frozen in court or snapped up by creditors. It would revert to the builder, me. I sat there for a while, flipping through other docs, just confirming. It wasn't ego, it was survival. If Evan was going to keep swinging a bat blindfolded, I needed something to keep the lights on when the glass started breaking. That agreement was it. That was my exit chute, and I just confirmed it still held. I backed everything up again. Copies of the license, copies of the code, full change logs. Stored one on a secure drive I kept in my glove compartment, another in the encrypted cold vault I used for major builds. Then I wiped the office scanner logs and shut the lights off. As I walked out, Evan was still in the glass conference room, pacing on another Zoom, laughing about something I couldn't hear. I didn't look twice, didn't wave, didn't even pause. He was already too far down the slide, and I was already off the ride. By Thursday, the wheels started coming off. Around 10:12 a.m., I got a Slack alert from our staging monitor. Something was thrashing. Load spiked, latency flatlined. I pulled the logs and saw the issue right away. One of the Denver clowns had gone into the server config and optimized boot speed by stripping out our sanitation hooks. Translation? Contaminated data spilled into 3 live test buckets. Some of it bounced to client mirrors. Bad inputs, duplicated entries, broken timestamp chains. It was a mess. I don't mean a few bugs. I mean one bad payload could have triggered a rollback on every financial sync we had lined up for end of quarter. I opened Slack and dropped a message in the infra support thread. Seeing corrupted test data in staging. I can help if needed. A few seconds passed. Then Evan replied, publicly. No need. Legacy knowledge isn't scalable. That was it. No thanks. No follow-up, just a smug brush-off in front of the team. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The thread went cold. Not a single dev responded after that. Not because they agreed with him, but because they knew what was coming. They'd seen me hold this system together with duct tape and prayer more times than they could count. They knew I wasn't going to fight this with emoji reactions and passive-aggressive threading. I don't do Slack politics. I do systems that don't explode. Then I stood up, grabbed my jacket off the back of my chair, and left the office without looking back. I didn't slam the door, didn't say a word, didn't have to. The countdown had already started. I walked in the next morning like nothing was off, even though the whole place felt tense. People avoided eye contact, fingers hovering over keyboards like they were waiting for instructions that weren't coming. I logged in, checked my messages, and before I got through the first 3, another meeting invite dropped from Evan. Subject line, important alignment update. I clicked in. His camera was way too close, like he'd pressed his laptop against a stack of books and called it professional. Hair over-gelled, shiny under the fluorescent light. He cleared his throat like he'd practiced it in the mirror. Big announcement, he said, leaning forward like he was delivering a TED Talk. We're outsourcing development of Coreline. My stomach tightened. Not panic, just that cold, steady kind of anger you feel when someone walks into your house and starts labeling your furniture outdated. Coreline wasn't a product. It was my life's work. 10+ years of nights, weekends, patches, rebuilds, and fixes nobody else even knew existed. I clicked on mute. I wasn't planning a fight. I just wanted to say I had started drafting a transition doc. Nothing finished, but I saw his cursor move. Before I even opened my mouth, the banner popped up. You've been muted by the host. He didn't look sorry, didn't even blink. Thanks for your legacy contributions, Jack, he said. We'll be in touch. Legacy contributions, like I was some retired museum volunteer. I didn't flinch, didn't ask for my audio back, didn't make a scene. Instead, I reached for my badge, the same one I'd worn since 2013, laminated edges cracked from years of swiping through doors that used to feel like home. I held it up to the webcam, slow enough that every person in that meeting could see it. Then I lifted the folded sheet of paper I'd tucked under my keyboard earlier that morning, my resignation letter signed in blue ink. I counted in my head, 1, 2, 3. Then I hit leave meeting. No speech, no explanation, no grandstanding, just a clean exit. Right before the screen disappeared, I caught a glimpse of Gwen, our legal head. She didn't say a word, didn't even shift in her chair, but her eyes widened, quick and sharp, like she'd just watched someone pull a pin from a grenade. She stood up and walked off camera without grabbing her notes. She knew exactly what I'd triggered, and she knew Evan had no clue what was about to hit him. I closed my laptop, slid the resignation letter into the outgoing mail tray, and walked straight out of the building. I didn't look back after dropping my badge, just walked straight to the parking lot, got in my car, and drove until the building shrank in the rear view. I wasn't angry, I wasn't gloating. I just felt this clean snap in my chest, like a cord had finally broken after years of being pulled tight. By the time I hit the main road, my phone started vibrating on the passenger seat. Emails, Slack pings, missed calls. I ignored every one of them. Less than 2 hours after I'd walked out, things inside Steelmark started cracking. That was the moment the panic probably hit full speed, because the board didn't care about Evan's ego or the consultant's buzzwords. They cared about losing a system that supported dozens of clients, millions in revenue, and half their product roadmap. And the timer had already started. 17 business days, ticking down like a countdown on a detonator. I finally pulled off the road at a gas station, grabbed a cheap bottle of water, and leaned against the car while the late afternoon sun cut across the parking lot. My phone buzzed again. More missed calls, more messages, more noise. I slid it into my pocket without checking a single one. Then I pushed off the car and headed for the driver's door. I drove north until the road narrowed and the trees got tall enough to block whatever noise was trying to follow me. Found a rental cabin off a gravel turnout, left the car by a stump, and carried a grocery bag inside, instant coffee, a paperback I bought at a truck stop, and a bag of pretzels. That was all I needed. I set my phone face down on the counter, powered on but muted. No notifications, no buzzing, just dead weight. While I settled in, Steelmark was tearing itself apart. The founder finally called a private emergency session. Not the usual performative stand-ups with branded mugs and fake enthusiasm. This one was behind a locked door, blinds drawn, tension thick enough to choke on. He dragged in Gwen, 2 senior engineers, and Evan, who apparently looked like he'd slept under his desk for 4 nights straight. I wasn't there, obviously, but I could picture it. The founder pacing, Evan sweating through a shirt he probably ironed wrong, Gwen sitting with that calm, patient fury she saved for real disasters. "Tell me we can fix this," the founder said. One of the engineers, quiet guy, always tapped his pen, mumbled, "Not without his signature." Evan tried to jump in. "The clause is symbolic. It's not—" Gwen cut him off by dropping the printed license doc right in front of him. Not tossed, dropped, hard enough to echo. "Binding," she said, "and you just lit it." Back at the cabin, I took my first sip of the instant coffee. Bitter, watery, perfect. The lake outside was still, except for a couple ducks cutting across the surface. The air smelled like pine and damp dirt, peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. My Slack lit up in waves. I didn't check it, but I saw the glow reflect off the wood paneling. One flare after another, like the app was trying to scream through the screen. Messages from engineers, project managers, interns, even the finance guy who always mispronounced Kubernetes. Then came the phone calls. First from the founder's assistant, then from an HR rep whose name I barely remembered, then from 2 old coworkers I knew were being pushed to fish for information. I didn't pick up. After a while, the calls got stranger. A number from an old client, a blocked number, a Colorado area code I didn't recognize. I let every one of them roll to voicemail. I flipped a page in the book. Didn't absorb a single sentence, but the motion was enough to keep my hands busy. By late afternoon, the founder's assistant went nuclear. She started calling people who had nothing to do with me anymore, friends from jobs I'd left a decade ago. a guy I used to play softball with in Sacramento, even reached out to a woman I dated for, 3 months back in 2013. I found that one out later and laughed harder than I had in weeks. Nobody could find me. That was the point. I'd spent 11 years being the guy everyone depended on, the one who answered midnight alerts and Sunday outages, the one who fixed everything before anyone realized something broke. Now the system was broken in a way they'd brought on themselves, and I didn't owe them a rescue. The sun started dropping behind the trees, turning the lake this deep orange that looked like someone dimmed the world. I shut the book, stretched my back, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding since the day Evan showed up in that stupid vest. My phone buzzed again on the counter, rattling against the wood. I reached over, grabbed it, and shoved it in the drawer. Monday morning, Gwen sat down with the executive team and didn't sugarcoat it. Coraline's continuity window expires in 12 business days, she said. After that, every client has legal grounds to terminate. Silence. No one even touched their coffee. They tried to push a test build that afternoon. Minor update. Something small just to prove the system was still under control. The pipeline stalled at root access. Vault wouldn't open. The biometric lock lit up red. Mine was the only print authorized. They turned to Gwen, thinking she could override it. Technically she could, but she didn't move, didn't offer. She said, Jack and I agreed, no solo overrides, ever. That rule had been written 5 years ago, after a failed code push nearly cost us our biggest client. Only 2 people could touch the base layer, me and Gwen, and we both had to be present to execute a critical change. I built it that way for a reason. Nobody flies blind through the core, not even legal. They started combing the system for anything resembling a transition doc. I'd left one half drafted just in case, a clean exit plan. Gwen was supposed to co-sign it. It was still blank. Audit logs confirmed I'd never finalized the signature. No backup custodian, no reassignment trail, no last-minute safety switch. Just a line of code I'd dropped 2 nights before. No commits, no logic changes. Just a message in plain text. Author removed. That's all I wrote. Then I shut the laptop. Not angry, just done. It felt like closing the front door of a house I didn't live in anymore. No drama, no pause. Just click and gone. Back in the office, Beth, a junior dev I used to mentor, remembered something. She dug through old Slack threads and found it. A post I'd written during a system integrity meeting 4 years ago. Clause 8.3b will protect us. She forwarded it to legal. They pulled the original timestamp. Gwen read it, held the screen a little longer than normal, and finally nodded. He warned us, and that was it. No more denials, no more spin, just the sharp edge of a clock ticking down. The next morning, I woke to the sound of geese tearing across the lake, loud enough to shake the cabin windows. I made another cup of instant coffee and sat on the step outside, letting the steam drift into the cold air. My phone stayed in the drawer until I finally pulled it out to check the time. That's when the headlines started popping up. A leak, not from me, not from anyone who cared about me. Just the natural result of too many people panicking at once. Clients figured out there was a license breach. The kind that didn't get smoothed over in quarterly updates. The kind that threatened entire contracts. One client paused their quarterly review before noon. Another killed renewal talks outright. The board reacted like someone had set the building on fire. They started calling emergency audits, grilling the founder, demanding timelines, demanding signatures that didn't exist. And Evan finally hit the wall. By Tuesday morning, he was out. No door slam, no security escort. Just a short email from HR about organizational changes, and an empty desk where his water bottle collection used to be. Someone said he didn't even clean out his drawers. Just walked out, shoulders caved in, face gray. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even feel satisfaction. When someone takes themselves down, you don't have to push. Around noon, the founder finally cracked. Pride, denial, whatever shield he'd been hiding behind. It all broke at once. He let Gwen draft a letter to every client on the platform. Real language, not PR smoke. We regret the choices that led to Jack Harper's departure. First time my name had ever appeared in a company-wide message like that. Took them 11 years and a crisis to spell it out. I saw the message only because someone forwarded it to my old personal email. The formatting was off on my phone, but the line stood out clear as a road sign. 2 hours later, while I was sitting at the edge of the dock, watching the water darken under cloud cover, my phone buzzed once. Just one message. From Gwen. You were right. No apology, no plea, no request to return. Just that. I read it. Let the screen fade to black in my hand. Then I stood up and slipped the phone back into my jacket pocket. The wind kicked up harder than I expected. I was 100 miles south, out past the old turbines, sitting on the hood of a dusty rental with the laptop next to me and the sky wide open above. No buildings, no cell towers, just open land and air that smelled like dry dirt and diesel from the truck stop a few miles back. I hadn't touched the machine in days. Didn't need to. The last time I used it, I left one final note in the core branch. No code, no syntax. Just a line of text that told the system what it needed to know. Now it was time to finish it. I flipped the lid open. It booted slow, fan grinding like a smoker on his last breath. Battery already dipping, like even the hardware was tired of carrying the weight. I waited. No Slack, no email pings, no updates from legal. Just the root license manager, loading in pieces, blinking its way to life. Then the red box popped. Revoke all access, no question marks. No second chances, just one button. I clicked, no fireworks, no alarms, no pop-ups trying to guilt me out of it. Just the screen fading to black. The cursor blinked twice and disappeared. That was it. Final. Full. Quiet. People always thought I was the back-end guy, the server whisperer, the guy who made things run but didn't make decisions. They were wrong. I wasn't the technician. I was the continuity holder. And the second they muted me and called it modernization, they broke it. They took a living system and turned it into a PowerPoint slide. They thought they could buy replacements and bury the work under jargon. But Coreline didn't run on buzzwords. It ran on ownership. And that walked out the second I did. I closed the laptop, stood up. The wind caught the hem of my jacket as I stepped off the bumper and back onto the gravel. Nothing dramatic, no slow motion, no music swell, just one more exit.